Verse 21. For even though they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks, but they became futile in their speculations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for an image in the form of corruptible man, and of birds, and four-footed animals, and crawling creatures. Direct reference to what is happening to Pharaoh in the land of Egypt. And Paul picks this up. You know, 7 times, yes, 7 times God will demand his church out of the hand of the oppressors until he delivers them. God is a time of mustering up all his plagues together when single ones are despised. God makes hearts sick with smiting, when blows will do no good upon the outward man. Heart evils are more grievous plagues from God upon men. Listen to this. Heart plagues are signal to make proud sinners acknowledge the supremacy of God. God will be known by his judgments to be the one Lord in all the earth. You see, it's interesting when you see the heart plagues, when the plague was sent, at the time when they were sent, they are sent when the soul is rebellious to the claims of God. Look at Pharaoh. In what do these plagues consist? They consist in an inward suffering of man's moral nature. Quickly, for what are they sent? They are sent to teach men the supremacy of God and their duty in relation to the Supreme Being. I just want to leave that there and move on. God's command exposes the rebellious heart. And I want you to see what happens to Pharaoh when he hears God's command again. Now, after God has said, for this time I will send my plagues on you yourself, on your servants and your people, so that you may know there is none like me in all the earth. He said, God, wow, man, do it. Let this guy really know that you alone are God. But in the midst of judgment, God always has mercy. This was the psalmist could write, his mercies never end. Yet you and I, when somebody offends us, my goodness, we want to pass a swift judgment on them forever. Maybe we could learn a lesson that God, even though all power resides in his hand, even though he does not have to put with unholy men and women, yet out of his mercy, he still gives us time. Third, God's mercy displayed in the midst of judgment. Look at verses 15 and 16. For by now I could have put out my hand and struck you and your people with pestilence, and you would have been cut off from the earth. But for this purpose I have raised you, to show you my power, so that my name may be proclaimed in all the earth. Do you know, this was outstanding when I did a little bit more research. Do you know the Philistines had known how God dealt with the Egyptians? Do you know, and forgive me for using this word, but it's true, this is how this woman was known, a prostitute by the name of Rahab in the walls of Jericho. When the spies came to spy out the land, she told them, we know what your God has done. We have heard that nobody has been able to stand in his path. So God is saying to Pharaoh, I'm letting you know what's going to happen, because in the midst of judgment, I'm going to show mercy. But for this person I raised you up to show you my power, that my name may be proclaimed in all the earth. And it was proclaimed. Till today we are talking about it. So verses 15 to 16, we see pestilence. We see first the outcome of divine power. And then we also see the outcome of divine anger. And then we see the indication of final destruction. Though God spares sinners a time, he will manifest his power in them at last. God will have the whole earth know his name in his judgments. So, they say about brick. When you take the clay out of the ground and you shape it, sometimes the sun can bake the clay and it'll become so hard. And once clay has been hardened, either by fire or by the sun, it is very difficult to undo that process. Did you realize that? So I want you to take that analogy and look at Pharaoh. He is hardening his heart. He's hardening his heart to the point where God will have to bring blow after blow. And instead of melting, he's going to break. God does not delight in destroying his creation. And that's why he brings mercy. And the truth, just like remember when Jesus comes before Pilate, and Pilate is questioning Jesus, and Jesus answers Pilate, and Pilate will say, well, what is truth? For a moment you think Pilate realized this body in front of me, this person in front of me embodies everything, maybe what Pilate would have wanted to be. And he realizes that Jesus has committed no crime. And he even says that. But very quickly his soul goes back to clinging to this worldly power. And then regardless what wrong is done, as long as he could retain his power. And here you will see what is truth. You see, the emotion can be convicted. The conviction will even be aroused in the heart of Pharaoh. And you will see that. And when the conviction is aroused, he will take a certain step. You almost said, great, Pharaoh has repented. Pharaoh has come to realization. His eyes have been opened. But as soon as that happens, you find again that pride. Thinking, I will take this as a contest. People have realized, don't try to be in contest with the Lord Jesus Christ. Every time you do that, you will lose. I've even seen pastors who become so big for their shoes because they've got so many people following that they feel now they've become bigger than Christ. Instead of looking at him as Lord and Savior and Redeemer, they begin to step, thinking they can step in his shoes and push him off the throne. So here we see now Pharaoh begins to realize. Now God doesn't say that he purposely makes Pharaoh that way. That he purposely fashioned Pharaoh so that he can display his power. That would be like a little child taking a rag doll and having a boxing match with a rag doll. That's not what God does. But God allows the man's sinful nature to really show up in standing in the face of God. And then God said, well, I'll tell you who I am, and I will show you who I am. God's judgment came with precision, ferocity. Look at verse 17 to 18. Exodus chapter 9, verse 17. You are still exalting yourself against my people and will not let them go. Behold, about this time tomorrow, I will cause very heavy hail to fall, such as never been in Egypt from the day it was founded until now. So this is not just one of those tornadoes coming through. Every year there's a hurricane coming through from the Gulf of Mexico and all that, and the devastation it carries. I remember I was told that Hurricane Arthur passed through our area here, and the disruption it brought, and power loss, and trees and all that. There was quite a destruction from what I hear. Here now I want you to see something very interesting. God says, you're still exalting yourself, pride, and you will not let my people go. Means you have made possession of what that doesn't belong to you. You know, that's the other most dangerous thing that I find as a Christian, as a pastor. Sometimes we take possession of what is not ours to take possession of. Folks, you belong to God. I belong to God. All that we have in this church, all that you have in your home, your children, everything that you have, everything that I have belongs to God. We are just stewards of what He has placed in our hands. And when we begin to say, this is mine, and you won't let go, God has got a way of prying it out of your arms. So, God says in Exodus 9:18, behold, about this time tomorrow I will cause very heavy hail to fall, such as has never been in Egypt from the day it was founded until now. Now, this came during January, February season. It was not a season where you would get that kind of ice storm to come on Egypt. It is a time when they have planted the wheat and the spelt and all that. It's a time when other things have begun to sprout out. And they did it during this season so that it would not be destroyed by flooding or whatever. And yet God is going to bring this phenomena at a time when it is not based on men's calendar. See, sometimes we think we got control. Many times I hear people talk about the environment as if we have the puny power to control anything. Folks, the Hurricane Laura passed through one of the places in the southern states. And can I say to you, the devastation it brought, and like I've said before, put all the powers to be in this world, America, Russia, India, China, Eastern European countries, the European countries, they could not stand in the path of Hurricane Laura. One hurricane. And guess what? That shows you how powerless we are. And here Pharaoh is still trying to gain this power. And what happens? This will come. Exodus 19 to 21. God's warning. Now this is interesting that takes place now. When God's warning comes, why would God give the warning? Why will He just not send the devastation? I've said to you, in the midst of God's wrath, there is always mercy. There's always mercy. You know, sometimes the message I used to hear a long time ago, God is a God of judgment and He's just out to judge you. You better do right or suffer the wrath. You know, I've come to find this God of mercy and grace and love. And sometimes I said, God, why are you so merciful? That person doesn't deserve that mercy. But thank God, He is God and I'm not God. Thank God He's a God of patience. You know, like He tells Pharaoh, I could have really squashed you out in all of Egypt. But yet I gave you time so that you would turn around. So God's warning obeyed by some and were saved. Look at verses 19-21. Exodus chapter 9, verse 19. Now therefore send, get your livestock and all that you have in the field into safe shelter. For every man and beast that is in the field and is not brought home will die when the hail falls on them. Then whoever feared the word of the Lord among the servants of Pharaoh hurried his slaves and his livestock into the houses. But whoever did not pay attention to the word of the Lord left his slaves and his livestock in the field.